The British royal family is currently navigating what might be one of the most quietly revolutionary phases of its modern existence. And it all centers around an astonishing decision made by King Charles that has reportedly sent massive shockwaves through the ancient corridors of Buckingham Palace. According to multiple emerging reports that the palace refuses to officially confirm, but everyone immediately believes, the king has officially handed Princess and the ultimate authority and oversight over Queen Camilla's royal spending, a move that effectively puts the Princess Royal in charge of the Queen Consort's wallet. To understand the sheer weight of the situation, one must realize that this story is not merely about pounds, pence, or the daily accounting logs of a royal household. Instead, it is a profound testament to what happens when an explosive report drops behind the scenes, capturing dynamics so perfectly aligned with what the public already knows about these powerful personalities that confirmation becomes almost unnecessary. The monarchy has always projected an image of absolute continuity, stability, and unshakable tradition, a philosophy that King Charles spent several decades contemplating while waiting to ascend the throne. Yet since his coronation, his vision has been explicitly centered around creating a significantly smaller, hyper-efficient operation that can survive modern public scrutiny. However, this specific development involving Princess and Queen Camilla goes far beyond simple organizational streamlining, because it sends an incredibly powerful, unmistakable message across the institution. And the fact that Buckingham Palace has maintained a rigid, absolute silence regarding the matter is honestly the loudest and most telling part of this entire unfolding narrative. The claims state that King Charles decided Princess and must possess strict oversight over Queen Camilla's official royal spending, which carefully distinguishes it from her personal wealth, focusing entirely on the massive funds connected to her public duties, international travel, dedicated staff, clothing for high-profile engagements, and the immense operational costs that naturally accumulate when serving as a senior working royal. Historically, these massive expenses are managed quietly behind closed palace walls, far removed from the prying eyes of the global media. So the very existence of this leak indicates that someone within the royal circle deliberately wanted this information in the public domain, because in House of Windsor, nothing ever leaks purely by accident. The immediate question echoing through the public is why Charles would implement such a drastic measure, and the most logical answer that aligns with his public declarations is the absolute necessity for institutional accountability, especially during an era where everyday British citizens are struggling with severely rising living costs, and the optics of royal extravagance matter more than they ever have in modern history. Even though much of the king's enormous personal wealth is generated through private estates, the sovereign grant which funds their official public duties relies heavily on public trust, a trust that Charles fully realizes can only be maintained by demonstrating flawless financial responsibility. On the surface, bringing in a figure as fiercely disciplined, careful, and scandal-free as Princess, and to review these extensive financial books makes total practical sense, as she spent her entire life proving she is the ultimate definition of a dedicated working royal who shuns luxury and respects the public's money. Yet, if this were merely a standard upgrade in financial management, it forces us to ask why such a system was not already implemented years ago, considering that Camilla's duties have not suddenly become more complex, leaving a lingering cloud of speculation over whether there was something specific within the spending logs that required a sharp, second look. Princess has built an immaculate, decades-long reputation for being a royal who refuses to show up just for glamorous photo opportunities, consistently topping the charts as the hardest-working member of the family, who carries out hundreds of demanding engagements annually with absolute precision, zero fuss, and a well-known habit of recycling outfits she has owned for decades. By placing someone so beyond reproach in charge of reviewing another senior royal's expenditures, Charles is capitalizing on her legendary stability, but it inherently implies that Camilla's financial choices required an extra, independent layer of rigorous analysis, which naturally creates an unspoken layer of tension. Queen Camilla has worked tirelessly for years to transform her public image, moving from a deeply controversial figure to a widely respected queen who has earned affection through genuine charity work and unwavering support for Charles, making it entirely natural for her to feel privately uncomfortable or defensive about having her sister-in-law suddenly act as her financial warden. While there is absolutely no public disagreement or visible animosity between the two women during their joint appearances, their absolute silence speaks volumes. demonstrating their mutual understanding that the survival of the crown depends entirely on presenting an unshakable, unified front to the world despite any underlying personal friction. Observers have long speculated about a quiet, stylistic power struggle between Anne's direct, no-nonsense military efficiency and Camilla's warmer, more relaxed approach to royal duties, meaning that any shift in internal responsibilities is instantly analyzed as a victory for one and a loss of influence for the other. Ultimately, the most grounded explanation is that Charles is attempting professionalized palace operations across the board, utilizing Princess and as a highly authoritative internal auditor who possesses the unique credibility to ask the hard questions that ensure the monarchy remains exemplary in an age that demands total transparency. To truly comprehend the structural shift occurring within the walls of Buckingham Palace, one must analyze the deeper mechanisms of royal funding, a system that remains profoundly misunderstood by the general public and heavily scrutinized by global economic observers. When reports filter out regarding the immense costs associated with international royal tours, state banquets, structural renovations of historic landmarks, and the maintenance of large personal staffs, the public frequently collapses these operational expenses into a singular narrative of unchecked personal luxury. In reality, the financial architecture of the British monarchy is strictly divided into two primary categories, namely the sovereign grant, which directly covers the official duties of the crown, and the private income streams generated by historic estates, such as the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall. The sovereign grant itself is inherently tied to public accountability, as its total value is calculated based on a specific percentage of the profits generated by the crown estate, meaning that every single pound spent from this fund carries a heavy weight of national expectation and governmental oversight. King Charles is acutely aware that the contemporary survival of the House of Windsor depends entirely on shifting public perception away from medieval entitlement toward a model of modern corporate efficiency, which explains why he has taken the unprecedented step of inserting Princess, and as a strategic financial filter. By expanding the Princess Royal's role to encompass the evaluation of Queen Camilla's expenditures, the king is establishing a rigid internal auditing mechanism designed to preemptively neutralize any potential media scandals related to financial excess before they can ever reach the public domain. Large-scale royal operations require an incredibly intricate budgeting process that covers everything from high-security transport and official wardrobe procurement to international diplomatic accommodations and administrative overhead. Areas where costs can easily spiral out of control without aggressive managerial discipline. Princess Anne's legendary reputation for unmatched frugality, practical spending, and deep institutional humility makes her uniquely qualified to challenge these budgets, enabling her to ask the sharp, structural questions that average palace bureaucrats might be too intimidated to raise with the queen consort. This setup does not mean that the Princess Royal is micromanaging daily purchases or examining minor receipts. Rather, she is providing strategic financial guidance to ensure that all large-scale outlays align perfectly with the king's vision of a highly streamlined, modern monarchy. For Queen Camilla, this arrangement represents a complex psychological and professional landscape to navigate, given that she has spent the last 2 decades meticulously rebuilding her standing within the royal family and earning public respect through consistent, high-profile charitable works. To suddenly have another senior royal, who happens to be her sister-in-law, granted formal oversight over funds connected to her official public role could easily be interpreted as an internal vote of no confidence or a subtle reduction of her autonomy. Yet, the absolute professionalism displayed by both women in public underscores profound, shared commitment to the stability of the crown, demonstrating that they are entirely willing to suppress personal discomfort or private disagreements to project an image of absolute harmony. The media inevitably attempts to frame this development as an explosive palace drama filled with bitter rivalries and quiet power struggles, as narratives of conflict between powerful royal women historically generate massive amounts of public engagement and tabloid sales. However, the operational reality behind palace gates is far more calculated, professional, and rooted in long-term institutional survival than the sensationalized headlines ever suggest. Princess Anne embodies a traditional, zero-nonsense, military-style dedication to duty that she inherited directly from her parents, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, an approach that prioritizes meticulous preparation, cost-effectiveness, and absolute discretion above personal comfort. Prince Philip himself spent decades modernizing the management of the royal estates, aggressively cutting waste and professionalizing the household staff, and Princess has clearly absorbed these exact foundational lessons, treating royal work as a demanding public service rather than a platform for personal glamour. By reinforcing these exact values through this financial appointment, King Charles is sending a definitive signal to the entire royal household that the era of unquestioned spending is permanently over and that accountability will be strictly enforced at the absolute highest levels of the family hierarchy. This strategic reform fits perfectly into a broader pattern of institutional restructuring that Charles has initiated since ascending the throne, which includes reducing the total number of working royals, streamlining massive ceremonial events, and concentrating public focus on highly relevant modern issues, such as environmental sustainability and community cohesion. An institution that demonstrates impeccable financial management is far better equipped to weather political criticism, justify its continued public funding, and maintain its historical relevance in a rapidly changing world that increasingly questions the validity of hereditary privilege. Furthermore, having a fiercely independent internal auditor like Princess and review these budgets actually provide a powerful layer of long-term protection for Queen Camilla herself, effectively shielding her from future media accusations of financial extravagance by ensuring every single expense has already been rigorously vetted and officially approved by the most trusted member of the family. To understand the final trajectory of this unprecedented financial rearrangement within the British monarchy, one must observe the grander historical landscape against which King Charles is executing these bold institutional reforms. The House of Windsor has endured an incredibly turbulent, challenging decade defined by the high-profile departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the tragic passing of Queen Elizabeth II, and structural public relations challenges that have forced the family to entirely reevaluate how it interacts with the modern public. In this highly volatile environment, the decision to elevate Princess in the role of internal financial regulator is a profound masterstroke of public relations and strategic leadership, establishing a solid barrier against the rising tides of Republican sentiment that frequently attack the crown's economic privileges. Symbolism operates as the absolute lifeblood of a constitutional monarchy, given that the institution possesses no direct political power or legislative authority, meaning its contemporary survival depends entirely on soft power, moral influence, and the flawless maintenance of positive public perception. King Charles fundamentally understood this reality during his decades of preparation, recognizing that in an accelerated digital media age dominated by instantaneous global news cycles, a single poorly timed renovation expense or an overly extravagant wardrobe choice can trigger severe, long-lasting damage to the crown's reputation. By deploying Princess as the ultimate arbiter of official spending, the king is leveraging her legendary status as a tireless, zero-nonsense public servant whose integrity remains completely beyond reproach across all political spectrums. The operational mechanics of this setup ensure that future palace budgets will undergo an immensely rigorous internal vetting process, forcing every royal department to meticulously justify travel expenditures, staff allocations, and public event costs before any taxpayer-funded resources are officially utilized. This structural change effectively shifts the monarchy toward an exemplary model of organizational governance, demonstrating to both the British government and the international public that hereditary privilege does not equate to financial unaccountability or unchecked aristocratic indulgence. Furthermore, this dynamic reshapes the intricate personal and professional relationships within the core family unit, positioning Princess, and not as a hostile adversary to Queen Camilla, but as a crucial institutional shield who absorbs the weight of external criticism and validates the legitimacy of the Queen Consort's public expenses. Despite the relentless efforts of global tabloids to manufacture a sensationalized narrative of a bitter, crown-shattering power struggle between two powerful royal matriarchs, the absolute dignity, silence, and focused execution of duties displayed by both women reinforce a powerful message of unity. The monarchy has survived for centuries precisely due to its unique, adaptive capacity to quietly modernize its internal systems without losing its sacred mystique, and this financial consolidation represents the natural evolution of that survival strategy. Ultimately, this story transcends simple balance sheets, calculators, and palace gossip. It represents a modern king who inherited an ancient institution under intense global scrutiny and possesses a definitive courage to enforce transparency, accountability, and fiscal discipline at the highest levels. by placing the calculated trust of the crown's finances squarely into the hands of the Princess Royal. King Charles ensures that the British monarchy remains profoundly resilient, relevant, and respected as it steps decisively into the future.